Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of that Esports Podcast by myself, Lee Jones, and my lovely guest, Josh Furneaux, aka Ferndog. I haven't heard that name in a while, though. Is that something you still go by?
I mean, I think the people that knew me from that, then just still continue to. The roles are different, right? In the coaching world, you often have an alias or an in-game name. I think in the more business world, you go by your actual name. So yeah, I mean, either way, both are fine. But yeah,
Cool. Well,
probably less so than I used to.
Yeah. Well, speaking of business world, then maybe we'll start with a couple of intros just for those that don't know who we are before we kind of get into what this podcast is about. Why don't you start then? Let us know who you are for anyone that doesn't know.
Sure. So I'm Josh Furneaux. I guess job role is League of Legends player agent for CAA Stellar. CAA Stellar being, I mean, probably CAA, the biggest agency in the world, and everything that they do, from kind of the music world with clients like Beyonce and the kind of acting world, clients like Samuel L. Jackson, and then in the sports world, a huge. I mean, I think they've got something over 1,000 footballers, professional footballers. So, yeah, huge in what they do, and then yeah, now more recently in the last few years, gone into the esports world with me, formerly a coach. I guess most notably coaching the LEC with Excel Esports when they first made it into the LEC in 2019, and yeah, more recently, the last 2 years now. Joined CAA Stellar and have become a player agent in that time. So, yeah.
Nice. Good stuff. And for myself, then, for anyone that doesn't know me, as I said, my name's Lee Jones. My main role, I guess, really would be esports journalist. So I freelance for a few different websites, and there's a few different websites I've written for since I started off almost about 5 years ago, I think, at this point. I've done some not to blow my own trumpet. I've done a couple of interviews that I was, for a few fairly known people. It's mainly in League of Legends, but actually, recently I got to interview Jarno Opmeer. I don't know if you even know who that is, Josh. Who is like a two-time F1 esports world champion. So that's probably the peak of mine so far. But I've done like some of these kind of talk shows and things in the past as well. So a few different things. Probably, you would, as you might say, the jack of all trades, but definitely the master of none of them. But the idea here, then, so let's talk about why we're actually here, rather than just blabber on about ourselves too much. So the idea with this podcast really is for it to be educational. So it might not be necessarily, well, it may be, but it's not particularly aimed at everyone that's going to be. Well, how do we say it? I'm not going to say it's not aimed at people that are watching every week, because it still could be useful. But it's not the kind of one where you're tuning in each week to see, what we're talking about, these games that's happened, or this league, which, a million other podcasts do already. This is more kind of giving an insight into how things run in the background. So the idea kind of would be for each episode to be focused on a different theme, where you guys, the viewers, hopefully can actually learn about that certain aspect of esports and things you might not know, rather than being, or just as being a fan, basically, without being in the weeds of it. So the idea then is that, each week we can get different people on. So there might be a week where we're focusing on, what does a coach do? What does an analyst do? And for each one, we'd have a relevant guest. So for today's episode, to kind of kick things off, just with the two of us, obviously we've got an expert agent on here. So that's going to be kind of the focus on this one. What does an agent do? Especially someone that's a football fan. In football, agents are kind of like this comical villain almost. The money grabbing, they're trying to sort of control things from the top. They're trying to make the players move when they don't want, so they can get their payday. So we'll maybe see how close it is, or how far it is away from that, and yeah, kind of hopefully learn what the agent actually does and how it works. So why don't you maybe start, Josh, with giving us just a very simple overview, first of all, of just the general basics of what does an agent do before we get too into it.
Sure. So I guess, I mean, this obviously varies. There's a huge amount of different agents, and they all poise themselves in different ways. But really, the kind of foundation is to have someone in the player's corner, right? A representative, someone that knows the business, on the player's side, effectively, when they are kind of navigating their career from the early days when they're taking kind of gaming or esports as a hobby into what that looks like when you actually turn that into a full-time career for yourself, all the way through to when you finish playing, retirement, effectively, which obviously, as we know, is a very young age for I mean, professional athletes and esports kind of gamers alike. That they're all retiring very early. Probably esports kind of athletes even earlier than professional athletes in lots of senses, or in sports athletes. So um, as of that, it's a very short career. Maximizing what you get out of that career, and then being able to have a path to navigate post career is really all part of kind of what an agent does. But I guess the underlying sentiment under what an agent should really do is, yeah, be the player's representative, be in the player's corner, and help them navigate their career in the most kind of profitable way
Mhm.
that they can.
Very nice. Let's maybe drill into some of the details then. And we can almost go from sort of the first step of when the player signs right till the end of actually getting them on a team, and even beyond that. So let's maybe start with players signing onto an agency. How does that even begin? Who makes the first move there? Did the agency go to the players? Will you have players reaching out to agents that maybe up and coming players looking for representation?
It's a bit of both. I think generally the agent would do a lot of the kind of groundwork in terms of they have certain profiles or certain kinds of types of players that they want to sign. Um, Whether that's they're looking for upcoming potential talent. I mean, I do quite a lot of this being a former coach, and I guess having a quite in-depth knowledge about the game itself, so I can study um, how players play, and effectively kind of create a scouting report on. I believe that this player is showing a lot of potential there, and I think they can actually make it big, and therefore getting in early and working with that player in the early stages allows me to help navigate from an earlier point than them having already hit major hurdles in their career that I haven't been able to help them through. So um, we're studying players all the time as agents. We're look at what types of profiles of players that we want to sign, and often we will reach out to the players uh, regarding asking if they're already represented by an agent, if that's not public information, and because I mean, again, there's often agent representation contracts are exclusive, right? So
Hmm.
meaning that they can't be really represented by multiple agents.
Is it possible
Um,
not to be exclusive then?
I think that I don't know about in esports. I haven't come across it in esports. I know in football, for instance, there are agents or there are players that have agents that have exclusivity over certain countries. So, for instance, like ex-English footballer has an English agency working for him, and the agency can represent him within England, right? So
Hmm.
to the English clubs and so on, he will be their client. But outside of England, he's got another agency searching for opportunities for him, searching for teams for him.
Mm.
We don't do that at CAA Stellar. We are exclusive with all of our clients, so all of our clients are just CAA Stellar clients. We don't really buy into the model of having multiple agents represent our players or multiple agencies represent our players. But this exists effectively. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the time it is for sure. I mean, I have a lot of players reach out to me, but often the ones I end up signing are the ones that I'm actively going after myself, and not. I mean, a player may crop up that I thought or I believe to be under contract with another agency. Maybe that representation contract has ended, and now they're looking for a new agency, and I didn't realize that yet, or something of that nature. Um, and they'll come to me saying, "Look, I'm looking for a new agent." So there is that kind of way, but for the most part, it's us reaching out to a player, and then I guess the kind of sell begins, right? Where
Hmm.
um, I that they want to know what are they signing up to effectively, and that's obviously super important for them. They're committing to a period of time, whether that's 1 year, 2 years, maybe even longer, with committing to having trusting me to represent them in this case. So they need to know that they're putting their career in trusted hands, effectively. Um, and what they actually get, what comes with signing to the agency, what's the benefits, what is the cost, and how all of that looks, what the package looks like, because like I say, they'll be committing to something for a period of time. They'll be signing to something that obviously needs to benefit them for it to be worth it. So it's my job to really sell that to them and
Mhm.
show that the service that we provide to our clients. Yeah.
How do you convince them then? What can you say that we say, oh, we'll do X thing that other agency won't do, or how do you make that?
I think, I mean, various agencies do different things. I think various agencies, especially in esports, have gone down different models of offering um, maybe out of game support, kind of nutrition, physical health, those kind of like added benefits
Hmm.
via specialisms. Um, Really, our service is very much about being a premium agency, right? It's about the network being stronger than other agencies they may sign with, about actually having deeper rooted connections with the teams that they may be looking at signing than perhaps other agencies do. Um, it's really about understanding what the player needs. I mean, all players need different things, but ultimately, I think what a lot of players need that come to us are, they want to know that their opportunities will increase when signing with the agency compared to team opportunities that they were getting on their own or with their previous agency. And then secondly, that actually the contract that they get when they sign with us, and we find them a team that they're interested in, the actual contract that they end up signing has been really thoroughly protects their interests, right? Whether that be the size of the buyout, whether that be
Hmm.
the actual salary itself, getting them more money is always a. I mean, everyone that's ever done a job wants more money, right? So, that the higher salary, which agencies are going to get me more salary than others, and how do you show that? But yeah, I mean, opportunities and then kind of protected contracts, really, where some of the stuff we've seen happen to players isn't shown to be happening with CAA Stellar players, for instance, whether that be kind of early terminations where the player is just cut out of the contract and all of a sudden doesn't have a job, um, protection of things like that, protection from kind of the benching side of it, and if a player is bench, how
Hmm.
much of their salary are they still retaining each
Yeah.
month? All of these stuff that I guess as someone on the outside you don't necessarily see because you're not privy to how much players are paid or how much. There's a huge difference, obviously, between being benched and being paid 80% of your salary for the rest of the season
Hmm.
and being benched and not having a job, right? They're two quite different things. So various different clauses in contracts where we aim to protect the players, or I mean, even whether that's transfers, salary. There's a whole host of kind of contractual clauses I'm sure we could go into, but
Yeah.
really they're the key benefits. And then beyond the team contracts, I guess commercial deals. Hasn't happened a huge amount in ERL level, to be honest, and most of my clients so far in the first couple of years of my age and kind of life have been um, aspiring upcoming ERL players.
Maybe, sorry, just quick. Maybe for anyone that's listening that maybe isn't League of Legends focused, or maybe not, uh, just wouldn't know what ERL
Sure.
means. It's basically like
Oh,
the
sure.
tier
Yeah.
two in Europe. So you've got LEC, which is the main European league, where you've got the basically the 10 biggest teams, and below that there's regional leagues in most of the different countries, and
Each of the
so
different countries in
so
Europe.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we mean by
So,
ERLs.
so tier one and tier two, effectively, I
Yeah.
guess, is probably a better kind of global explanation. But for tier two clients, a lot of the time, um, commercial deals. So what I mean by commercial is brand deals. I mean, you've seen deals with kind of peripherals or
Hmm.
chair makers or whatever. These kind of deals. Obviously, someone at CAA Stellar, we're doing brand deals with athletes, with actors, with actresses. All these deals. When you're watching TV and you see adverts, you see an actress on there or an actor or a musician. A lot of time, an agency has got them that brand deal. They've got them that advert, so to speak, and therefore uh, the client is being paid off of the back of doing that work of obviously doing whatever their kind of commercial deal entails. But effectively, they're another means to make income for tier 1 players for the most part. If tier 1 players, someone like Reckless in League of Legends world is probably the most known for doing a lot of kind of big commercial deals. He's very commercially kind of attractive to a lot of brands, right? He's a good looking guy that likes being in front of the camera. So I know with when he was on G2, for instance, he was doing Ralph Lauren and a huge amount of these kind of big brands that I mean, an agent is job, or part of the job is to find and leverage these commercial deals and then negotiate what those contracts look on those deals so that the player is retaining the most amount of money for undergoing those kind of deals.
So would those kind of contracts end up getting, even once they're on a team, then is it likely that they'll even get a cut of like the team's commercial things? Because you say like with someone like Reckless there, for example, from what I remember, I'm pretty sure that Ralph Lauren, it was a G2 sponsorship. So G2 was the team he was on, but then when it's a player that's as big as him and so well known, that player or that player's agent could make the argument that when you sign our player, it's going to get you these commercial opportunities. So when we get this big Ralph Lauren sponsorship, my player has to get X% of the revenue.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I think this is an esports into the future movement type thing that we should hopefully look to see. So with esports not being regulated in the same way that perhaps some traditional sports are and such, there is some kind of rule within football for sure where if there's something like less than 3 players on or it might be less than 5 players on a kind of so say the Ralph Lauren advert, we'll use that as an example. If less than 5 other teams play, we'll say Arsenal was without Ralph Lauren, if they use less than 5 players on the Ralph Lauren advert, then it no longer counts as like a team commercial kind of event effectively, and the players actually it counts as individual commercial deals, and that therefore it needs to be treated as such. In esports, a bit different. In esports, current contracts, pretty much you sign your image rights, you sign your rights to the team when you sign, and that's effectively included in your salary, included in your what you're being paid on a monthly basis by the team, and therefore they can use you in their commercial their own commercial deals. That doesn't stop, however, players having their own personal commercial deals. However, generally, a lot of the teams have more deals than players, and therefore the players need approval from their teams. So we need signed and written approval to sign a sponsorship deal for on a personal level for a team. And yeah, that's kind of how that works. I guess generally they don't take a cut of the team personal deal. So if Logitech sponsors G2, for instance, if that's the case, and you have Caps in that, and Caps does something for Logitech via G2, it depends on the contract, of course, but generally G2 take the money, whatever the deal is that they've signed with Logitech.
Yep. Okay, fair enough. Maybe just taking a little step back, just one more question I had about players signing on to agencies. So there was a pretty big move in European League of Legends that happened in this off season that we just had, where Japanese player Eevee, am I saying that right? Is it Eevee or Evie?
Yeah, Evie, I think you would probably pronounce it better, yeah.
Yeah, so Evie was a Japanese player playing in the Japanese league, and he basically became, well, he was a good player first of all, but then he became kind of well known to the Western audience in international events where he would always do his thumbs up to the camera, and it kind of became a bit of a meme. But then, but yeah, then his team went on and actually, started upsetting teams a little bit, and in terms of like performance,
they took a game off G2, right?
Yeah,
they made every single international tournament pretty much.
Yeah,
dominated their own region.
So he kind of became pretty well known over in the West, in Europe, and in North America, and then suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, this off season, he actually came to Team Heretics in Europe, and then you came out with a tweet that you were representing him as well, and I presume had a decent part to play in that. So first of all, then, how do you end up as someone that's looking at tier 1 and tier 2 in Europe? How do you end up suddenly representing this player from Japan?
Sure. So, I mean, I guess it starts with watching a huge amount of League of Legends everywhere, not solely in Europe. While I guess my initial knowledge base is within the European player base, I watch. I watch. I guess the top teams, I suppose, in what we'd class as wildcard regions, but then watch all major region games everywhere, pretty much. Um, so, I mean, it starts with that. It starts with a large scouting network where I consume a huge amount of games to try and understand who players that I think would be on the radar of the major region teams from these wildcard regions. And Evie was almost a no-brainer in that sense. I mean, he's taken this DFM to Detonation Focus Me, his Japanese team, to multiple international tournaments, surpassing all expectations. Even when they've got there, performed on the international stage very well against well-respected and very talented top laners from major regions. And I think it's a matter of time that if you continue to do that, as long as logistically it's a possibility for you, then opportunities are going to arise. And to be clear, Evie created his own opportunities with his performance in terms of being noticed by the top teams. That wasn't something that I needed to necessarily do for him. I guess how it came about that this move occurred is more so that I was aware that I'd spoken to him before loosely. At the time, he didn't need an agent to stay in Japan. He didn't need an agent to stay at Detonation Focus Me. He'd been on that team for a long time. He knew the owners. He knew everything. He was getting a good deal there from his point of view, and he didn't really need to give someone a cut of that deal that he was so successful with. When it came to if I move abroad to try something quote unquote bigger and better in a major region, I may need someone in my corner to support and back me up a little bit on that, and really be uh, ensuring that that move is smooth and that I get the best possible deal that I can get. I get the best possible teammates. I get the best environment. I want someone who knows the organizations that may be interested in me. I want someone who potentially knows the coaching staff that I'd be working with. So that's, I guess, where I came in, and obviously could provide all of that knowledge to him. I know Peter Dunn. He was on Splice when I was coaching XL, for instance, as well as post that as an agent. I've spoken to him a lot about potential deals, potential transfers, and such. So yeah, I mean, I knew the information he wanted someone to know, as well as I was knowledgeable about salaries in Europe, about offers that whether the offer or whether the potential kind of money and terms that in this instance Heretics were talking were fair, and whether that matched where we were at and what his skill level was.
Go on, tell us what he's on then.
um, It's good money. It's all good money. When you get to tier 1, it's always good money, right? I'm not going to directly disclose, obviously, his salary unless he wanted me to. But yeah, he's got a good deal, right? And a deal that he's very happy with, and more importantly, a team and a project that he believes can succeed. Because there was no point making this move just to join just for the sake of it, right? You may as well stay in Japan and finish first every year if he was going to do that. So he's gone to Europe and to really test himself against top laners in a major region. He's left his comfort zone to really push himself in a project that he believes the coaching staff and the players he's got around him can really push towards the top end of that table, and hopefully grow. And he can learn things that he would never have learned. He can make more money perhaps than he ever would have made in Japan. DFM were very clear that they wanted to put an offer on the table as well for him at the time, which was a very, very good offer. I mean, a crazy good offer, to be honest, to try and keep him. So he was super valued where he was. But for him, the most important thing was that he was joining a project in which he could really test himself and show his ability to more of the world, I suppose, than just nationally in Japan.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very nice. So once a player signs them, what's the next process from there? So is it And I suppose maybe it depends on when they're signed. So is it common to sign players like sort of mid-season, but when there's not sort of immediate negotiations and things to do for them?
I think players often prefer not to, in some ways, that they see that as uh, they see it as, I mean, there's less an agent can do for me right now. I'm in a contract for the remainder of the year, or I'm in a contract for the next 2 years. There's not a huge amount an agent can do for me at this point. So what's the benefit of signing?
Would that then be? I'm presuming that's because I guess agents normally basically get paid by like is it like a percentage of their salary? So they're
Yeah.
thinking
So
if I'm already in a team, why would I pay
generally, it's a
5 to
cut of the
10%?
salary.
Yeah, until I need
Yeah.
it.
We for clarity, we don't take any cut in our agency. I don't know exactly how the deals of other agencies work, but in our agency, we don't take any cut of any deal that we didn't work on, right? So if we
Hmm.
signed a player, say we signed Evie mid DFM contract, we don't take any money from that deal while it's on that contract. If he then went on to sign a new contract with DFM that we negotiated, or whether he went on to move to Europe or to NA or anywhere else, and we negotiated the deal for him, perhaps found the team for him, opened up the doors for him, so to speak. At that point, once he starts getting paid from his new deal, then we start taking a cut. But uh, um, yeah, so I think for players, there's a multitude of reasons, right? That they're focused on actually playing the game, they're focused on winning games, they're focused
Hmm.
on the work they do with their coaches. The stuff around that doesn't take place so much outside, but there is a huge amount. You never know when something's going to crop up where you need an agent. So personally, I think you should always be under an agency if you're a tier one player, especially, or an aspiring tier one player. You should always have someone in your corner, for a multitude of reasons. You just never know what's going to happen, that you need someone to fight your corner, basically. But um, I understand also from a player's point of view why perhaps it's not that important when
Hmm.
you're in the middle of August or something, and you've got several months, and you've got perhaps worlds coming up or playoffs coming up or whatever it may be, that you really want to focus on that. And another, I guess, part of a good agent's job is to ensure that their player can just play the game, and the other stuff is taken care of. So
Hmm.
um, if we're going to kind of, yeah, what happens after a player signs with the agency, generally a lot of those major players looking for a new agent, agents looking for new players, happens um, when for all reasons really, is when a player may potentially move team, right? And they're looking at potential. Actually, I don't. My contract's up in November. The kind of free agency period is starting, but teams are starting to look around kind of September, late September, early October, I suppose, for League of Legends anyway.
Hmm.
And then from there, having an agent in your corner to try and open as many doors as possible, and allow you to kind of harvest opportunities, I suppose. Um, having a lot of the agency signing players happens around that period of time. So yeah,
Hmm.
from the point where you sign, it's then really strategizing what the next steps of your career look like, what we're actually going to do for that client that we've just signed, what creating a kind of pathway to where they're at now to where they want to go and what they want to do. Is there any preference over the types of teams they want to be in? Is there any regions that they particularly want to go to, don't want to go to?
Hmm.
And starting to really connect and understand the client, I guess, if nothing else, and then yeah, walking down that pathway with them to the point where they join a team that they're happy with.
Yeah. And then is it that common then to even be talking to orgs and teams before free agency started, or because I know
Yeah.
most of the times players will have to maybe have agreement from their current organization to be allowed to talk to other teams, especially if they are unless they're already a free agent.
Yeah.
But do you find it fairly common that a team might reach out and just say, is there anything happening
Yeah.
with X player or?
It's at tier one level at the moment. While deals aren't signed until the free agency period or the window officially opens, deals are done. Most deals are agreed.
Hmm.
Um, because I mean, if you don't make Worlds, and maybe you don't make playoffs even in a major region, your season, your year is over in September. If your year is over in September, you've got effectively kind of teams start scrimming at tier 1 in December quite often against each other with their new rosters. So you kind of got October, November, and generally like the window opens around the 20th, 21st of November. So you've got really kind of 6 weeks or something of free time, and that free time is often spent by teams internally discussing what they want to do with their rosters, internally discussing about creating shortlists, doing scouting of who they would want for next year, for the following years. And during that period, there is a huge amount of going out to teams, talking to teams. What's the availability of this client? Obviously, with stuff like the global contract database in League of Legends, you can see when a player or a coach is out of contract. So providing that player or coach is going to be out of contract in November, and we're a bigger opportunity than where they are currently, let's talk to that. Let's go to the team. Obviously, they have to approach the team first to get permission. So G2 want a player from Fnatic or something, G2 will have to go via Fnatic to say we would like permission to talk to X player. If the player is not going to re-sign with Fnatic and Fnatic don't want to re-sign that player, they'll often just allow that, right? They'll often just accept that because effectively the player's going for free anyway. So the permission is often granted, and then you get to a point of whether it's some kind of tryout. I think a lot of time when you're headhunted like that, they already know they want you. They don't need a tryout. And there'll be discussion on terms then, on something kind of it's almost like a pre-contract where I mean, I know here verbal agreement is the term often thrown around. At a tier 1 level, at least, often that verbal agreement is we've agreed on the basics of the deal and signed something to say that we agree on those basics, so that there's no pulling
there is
out
actually
from both
something in
sides.
writing as well then?
Quite often, yes, there's a pre-agreement effectively.
Because we hear sometimes about like, oh, this team or this player had verbally agreed here and then they broke their verbal agreement, but would that only be possible if it actually was a verbal agreement? Otherwise, I guess
those are
in writing,
possible where
maybe not the case.
those instances are often where I've said to you that I'm quite interested in joining your team. Okay, this is the salary you'd offer. Yeah, that sounds good to me, and that's kind of where the conversation's gone. Or I'm up for joining your team. But then what they realised is that they got more opportunities as weeks went on, and they found something that they perceived to be better, and therefore they go back on their word and say, actually, sorry, I'm not going to join you anymore. Whereas the team was under the assumption that they would. This happens both ways, of course. Teams also do this. They take, I guess, the most high-profile case of this that was very public was Carmine Corp and Jack Spectra a year ago. Carmine Corp wanted Jack Spectra. There was, again, I wasn't privy to the details, so but there was some kind of agreement in place where they were going to sign Jack Spectra. Reckless became available from G2, and all of a sudden Jack Spectra didn't have a place at Carmine Corp anymore, and Reckless did, and the rest is really history on that. But that happens both ways. Teams do that, players do that. But like I say, at a tier 1 level these days, there's often a pre-agreement signing where a player or a coach or whatever has agreed on a salary, they've agreed on a length of contract, and it is in writings from both parts that neither part can pull out of legally.
I guess it's similar to maybe in football where you get like a Bosman transfer. So in football, there's rules where like if you're in the last 6 months of your contract, you are allowed automatically to talk to teams, at least from other countries, and you can sign a pre-contract to basically say in 6 months when my current contract runs out, I'm going to go to your team. And everything's already agreed.
And start on that day. It starts on a future date when you're going to become a free agent, effectively, and that's what these deals are. So a player may sign in September for a team that they're going to join in November officially, to secure that from both sides. It's in writing Otherwise, when you don't have this in writing, like we say, what happens is that the team expects the player to join, but it keeps their eye out for other options in that role. The player expects to join that team, but keeps their eye out for other opportunities, because at any point either could back out. But when it's officially signed by both parties, there isn't any backing out at that point, and there's commitment from both sides, which is what in the best kind of best will of both sides. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. This is maybe a question. Maybe it's going to be hard for you to answer because I might be putting you on the spot a little bit. But when it is this kind of stage where it's the off season basically, and there's teams who are negotiating and they're trying to build their rosters, this is when obviously you've got peak leaker season at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's maybe not got quite the same kind of same of thought attached to it in at least League of Legends that we know, because this can happen a few times as well, comparing things to football, because it's kind of the same in a way, but much bigger already and has been going for longer. But in football, you get this thing where, and it might not even be specifically when the off season and transfers are going to happen. It can happen any time where players just always have rumours about this player's going here, this team is looking at this player, they've put in a bid, whatever.
This player's unhappy with that team, or they're unhappy with the team.
And especially that kind of thing, you start hearing like, oh yeah, X player doesn't like the trainer methods of the coach, or or it might just be. And I remember a specific example. So I'm a Tottenham fan. I'm sorry for anyone that's going to be annoyed at that. And one of our players, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, he joined a couple of years ago from a team called Southampton. And it was kind of like a couple of months where it was rumoured that we were going to sign him. And basically there was rumours it was like almost done. And then right when it seemed like it was almost going to be done, there was suddenly this rumour, Everton are also interested. But then you kind of hear the tier one journalists, the reliable ones, come out and say, no, it's a load of rubbish. We don't know where that's come from. And then the thought is, it's maybe his agent that slipped it to a journalist to try and bump up his salary at his new team because they think there's more competition. Or it might be his team has slipped that to a journalist to make it look like there's more demand and they now want a bigger transfer fee for you to win that. So how often is that kind of thing happening then? Do you ever see that where it could be from an agent, it could be from a team, where you might see a rumour that one of your players maybe is meant to be going somewhere and you're not quite sure where that's come from? Or
it's a strange one in League of Legends, I think, because it is very frowned upon, or seems to be, by the community and by coaches and by those surrounding it. And sometimes that is the case, and you have to squash rumors, right? But sometimes it benefits, and it actually makes sense to do that, and it is important for the player's growth. And normally people in the player's corner want the player to get the biggest kind of growth as possible, whether that's in salary, whether that's in stature of team, whether that's in opportunities, whatever it might be. But I mean, it really amazes me some of the leaks, how quickly someone like Wooloo gets hold of information. Like I've been in conversations with what was effectively a call like we're having, that's obviously not publicized, with a player and a team, and within quarter of an hour of coming out of that call, I haven't said anything, but the it's being reported that there's a verbal agreement between a player and team.
Because I see it sometimes. I can't remember the other guy's name. It's like Antonym, something like that. Spanish guy. And he's kind of like him and this guy, LEC Wooloo, are kind of like the two most prolific. I guess LEC Wooloo is the most famous one.
Yeah.
And it happened a couple of times this off season where they'll both tweet something like 2 minutes apart, and it's like, and it'll be like that verbal agreement with this guy and this guy has happened tonight, and it's like they've basically been given it at the same time. Like someone's just like heard something and sent it straight to these guys. But I guess one difference I'd noticed actually, and we may be kind of veering away from the end topic a little bit, just in general with that, where I've compared it to football. In football, it is very prolific for absolute bollocks transfer journalism, basically, where you will get a lot of people just throwing shit at the wall, as they say, and seeing what sticks. You'll basically get just hundreds and hundreds of articles every few months for every team, for every player, that's just completely made up from thin air. I suppose in esports or specifically in League of Legends, I don't notice that that's accepted
No,
yet.
most of it's true, to be honest, right?
Yeah, it's mostly true.
Most of what
Or if
you
and when someone does get one wrong, um, I
they
feel
get
it does get
hounded to
called
death.
out to a decent extent. Usually they'll
Yeah.
get away with it and then still be fine the next one. But I feel like if someone was getting things wrong so much as people do in say football, then I don't think it would be taken for that long.
I, I think where it's a concern is where a player is losing out opportunity
Yeah,
because of it, right? So, for instance, they say X player has verbally agreed with X team. Therefore, all other teams that are there that are potentially interested go, well,
focus
he's
elsewhere.
agreed. And
Mhm.
they go and look at their other opportunities. And if he hasn't agreed and he's still looking for other teams, well, he's just lost a load of opportunities. So where that happens is damaging. Where it happens, like you say, where maybe I've got uh, two teams looking at a player, and where or I've got one team close to a player, and then they feel like they've offered a salary. Maybe the salary is okay, but it's perhaps not what is desired. Perhaps it's not where we really wanted it to be. For then there to be interest from other teams is a good thing, right?
Mhm.
Because there's now, I mean, it's not a good thing for the team for sure, but it's a good thing for the players if there's other interest, because if there's other interest, then his value is increased, and the likelihood is the player will get more salary from that because um, they're competing against each other to sign a player that they both really want. When only one person wants something, the value is significantly less, of course.
Yeah.
So when a player is sought after or a coach is sought after by a multitude of different teams, then the transfer value is inevitably higher.
Mhm. I suppose
And
it's maybe
teams
something
don't get
where in just the landscape of League of Legends in particular, it's maybe just fundamentally different from like maybe traditional sports where it wouldn't be as effective, like someone trying to plant a story like that. Because I feel like in League of Legends, first of all, it's not like football where say the Premier League got 20 teams, each one's got 25 players, so you're looking at
yeah
400 plus players there. In League of Legends, it's much smaller, so you basically got 50 players in the
sure
LEC. The players all know each other, so if a player actually is talking to teams, people will generally know it.
yeah
There'll
it's
there'll
too
be
easy to
like
know
tryouts
everything
and things. You
really.
can't really make it up and everyone
It,
believe it because everyone knows each other. And also in League of Legends, players move all the time, so it's not like football where you might be in the same group for 10 years. The players are
no,
chopping all
sure.
the time, so they do basically all know each other.
And then
And something
it's
like that
like
probably can't
all those
fly.
players from those leagues. There's also a load of other leagues that can operate on a salary basis at the same level. Whereas if you look at something like League of Legends, Tier One Europe, there's 10 teams that
Yeah.
can operate at a certain level. There's 10 teams in North America that can operate at a certain. So that there's not. Like you say, it's much harder to get a fake story believed by the actual people that it matters to be believed about.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, I think it's a tactic that isn't necessarily bad. I think teams are also pre-agents, I guess pre the last few years. Teams are very used to somewhat getting their own way with deals. If they want X player, um, they are not used to uh, necessarily having to go up from in their estimations to secure a player, like what they believe to be the fee should be the fee. And it's a little bit not their own way these days with more and more agents in the space, because players aren't just joining off the back of a promise that this is the org you want to sign for and these are the teammates you want. There's a bit more to it than that now. So yeah, I mean, some of the stories are good for players, good for to advance their careers. Some of them can be damaging, like I say, but I don't. I think it when there are these stories, it creates interest. It creates a spectacle for fans to join in and be a part of the whole kind of transfer window. I personally feel that I don't think so. In football, we often know how much a player is paid. We often know how much a transfer was for. We often know how much. Man City's squad is compared to Southampton's squad.
A lot of time not even know the agent's cut as well. When it's a prolific, high
Exactly,
profile enough
exactly.
transfer, then it becomes public as well. How many
And
millions have been
I
made
think
in
sometimes that stuff can be fabricated, or it can be factual, right? Maybe other agents giving false information to make it look like
it?
one
Yeah.
agent's taking too big
Yeah,
a cut or whatever.
true.
They can be tit for tat for sure. But I do think that professional games where you're competing team versus team is judged differently when you realize that X team are paying 5 million in salary a year, X team are paying 300,000 in salary a year, and why should it be close? You know, or something of that nature, rather than judging team by team. Like, yes, this team's way better than this team. Well, of course they should be, but actually you don't know that if you're just a generic fan and you don't understand the economics or the kind of monetary power behind the different organizations.
Mhm.
So if a team finishes third and perhaps they shouldn't have finished third, that achievement is even greater when you realize that they were the ninth lowest spending team in the whole league or something, as opposed to they were the top spending team in the league, but actually they finished third.
Mhm.
But you know, the judgment, and of course the monetary kind of input doesn't always attribute to direct output immediately, but um, judging that expenditure against the output of results gives you a more fair result, I think, for fans. Like, what can be considered overachieving, underachieving is more accurate when you see the monetary spend on certain rosters and certain
Mhm.
projects.